They told him he didn't belong at his own son's graduation. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. This is a story of Sergeant Elijah Brooks, a decorated veteran and father, whose quiet presence at a military ceremony was challenged until 4 Navy SEALs stood up, not with words, but with unshakable loyalty. Before we dive in, hit subscribe, like this video, and drop your city below. Let's see how far the story travels. The sun was shining bright over Camp Pendleton, California, a day marked by celebration, pride, and new beginnings. Families gathered in crisp uniforms. Faces glowed with pride as sons and daughters took their first steps toward a future in the armed forces. Elijah Brooks sat quietly near the back, his broad shoulders squared, dressed in his own dress blues, a silent sentinel, a man who had served 2 decades in every imaginable harsh terrain. His son, Jason Brooks, was about to receive his Navy graduation honors. Jason was a fresh-faced young man, standing tall in his dress whites, the pride of his family evident in every step. The national anthem echoed, filling the air with solemnity and hope. The crowd settled, ready to witness the ceremony, until 2 security officers approached Elijah with urgent, silent purpose. "Sir, we need you to leave," one said. Heads turned. A hush fell over the crowd. Elijah didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice or show anger. His jaw clenched, eyes steady, posture unwavering. His son froze mid-step, caught between pride and disbelief. Who tells a veteran, a father, that he doesn't belong at his own son's graduation? The tension rippled through the audience like a wave. For men, sitting just a few rows behind, slowly rose. No fuss, no words, just presence. Their silence spoke volumes. They were Navy SEALs, decorated, respected, lethal. Judging by their faces, they weren't about to let this slide. Elijah had missed birthdays, holidays, funerals. Worn scars and old wounds reminded him of battles most never saw. But none of that mattered today. Today, he was just a father, showing up early, sitting quietly, trying not to be noticed. One of the guards reached out, a hand on Elijah's arm. His voice was calm but carried like thunder. "Don't touch me, and you'll wish you hadn't." The crowd froze. From the back, another voice cut through, low, deliberate, icy cold. "You might want to think twice." The 4 SEALs moved forward, cutting a path through the crowd without touching a soul. One guard reached for his radio. The SEALs didn't blink. "That man has more combat time than all of us combined." One whispered near the guard, "Are you sure this is a hill you want to die on?" Jason, the graduate, stepped out of formation, eyes burning with fierce pride. "That's my father." The moment cracked, the invisible weight of years of disrespect surfacing all at once. The guards looked shaken. Before words could fly, firm boots echoed through the hall. The base commander strode in, face tight with restrained rage. "Stand down." Guards stiffened. SEALs didn't move. The commander approached Elijah directly, offering a hand. "Sergeant Brooks, I'm sorry. The ceremony will not begin until you are seated where you belong." Elijah didn't take the hand. He looked past the commander to Jason. The pain in the boy's eyes mirrored his own. No apology could erase what had happened. Before the anthem, before honors, before anything official, Jason saluted his father. The room fell completely still. Elijah blinked hard. The SEAL straightened. The commander's hand slowly lowered. In that moment, everyone understood. This wasn't about rank or protocol. It was about respect. When the ceremony resumed, Elijah sat front and center. The guards were gone. When Jason stepped forward to receive his honors, those 4 SEALs stood behind him like a wall. No words, no movement, just loyalty. Because some battles aren't fought on the battlefield. They are fought in silence, against invisible enemies. Ignorance, prejudice, disrespect. And no one disrespected Marine's family, not while his brothers are watching. The echoes of boots faded, but the weight in the air did not. The crowd, once buzzing with celebration, now held a fragile silence. Everyone processing what had just happened. Elijah Brooks sat tall, unshaken. Yet inside, the familiar sting of disrespect burned anew. His son Jason returned to his seat, chest swelling with pride but eyes clouded with disbelief. Outside the auditorium, whispers swirled like wildfire. Security guards, once confident, now found themselves scrutinized. The 4 SEALs who had stood with Elijah became the silent heroes of the day, their mere presence a powerful statement. Word traveled quickly through the base. By sundown, Sergeant Brooks' story was everywhere, shared in hushed conversations, retold with outrage and awe. In the days that followed, community leaders, veterans, and civil rights advocates rallied. They saw in Elijah's experience a reflection of a deeper, systemic problem: the invisible barriers and biases faced by black service members and their families. Meanwhile, the base commander, Colonel Randall Hayes, found himself navigating a political storm. His office was flooded with calls, some demanding swift action, others demanding answers. For the security team, the incident was a turning point. Jake, the guard who had first told Elijah to leave, sat at home replaying the moment. He'd never expected resistance, certainly not from a man so composed, so revered. But the 4 SEALs, quietly proud, moved on with their duties. They had sent a clear message: no disrespect to a Marine or his family would go unanswered. Back at home, Elijah and Lila shared a quiet dinner. The room was filled with soft light and the weight of unspoken thoughts. Elijah broke the silence. This wasn't just about me or Jason. It was about every soldier who's been made to feel invisible, every family who's faced judgment instead of welcome. Lila nodded. We have to keep fighting, not just for ourselves, but for those who can't. Elijah's phone buzzed, messages of support flooding in from fellow veterans, friends, even strangers touched by his story. Among them, an invitation from Florida A&M College of Law. They wanted him to speak, to share his experience, and inspire the next generation. At the law school, Elijah stood before a sea of eager faces. He spoke of courage, of dignity, and of the power to demand respect. He reminded students that the law was a tool, imperfect, yes, but capable of change when wielded with wisdom. One young woman asked, "How do you stand so tall in the face of so much adversity?" Elijah smiled softly. It's not about standing tall alone. It's about standing with those who have your back, and sometimes standing quietly until the moment to speak up arrives. Lila, inspired by Elijah's resolve, began laying the foundation for the Gideon South Legal Aid Initiative, a nonprofit dedicated to helping military families and underserved communities navigate the complexities of justice. The initiative faced challenges: funding struggles, skepticism, long hours. But every victory, every family helped, every case won, was a beacon of hope. Word of the incident and Elijah's fight spread beyond the base. Local media covered the story extensively. Podcasts featured conversations about systemic bias in the military and law enforcement. Within the sheriff's department, whispers turned to official investigations. The security guards faced disciplinary hearings and retraining. The ripple effect was undeniable. One morning, Elijah received a handwritten letter from a young man named Marcus, inspired to join the military and pursue law after hearing Elijah's story. It read simply, "Thank you for standing tall. You gave me hope." Elijah placed the letter beside his collection of medals and mementos. It was a reminder that the fight, though tiring, was far from over. As twilight fell, Elijah and Lila sat hand in hand on their porch, watching the sky turn shades of purple and gold. "We didn't just win a day," Lila said softly. "We started something." The courtroom was packed to the brim. People from all walks of life had come to witness the final chapter of the case that had shaken the community. Some knew Sergeant Elijah Brooks by reputation, a veteran, a father, a man who embodied dignity in the face of adversity. Others came because they saw in his story a mirror of their own struggles, their own fight for respect. Judge Marissa Caldwell sat poised, her gaze steady as she prepared to deliver the verdict. Her voice echoed clearly across the room. After careful consideration of all evidence, testimonies, and the broader context of this case, this court finds that the actions of security officers violated not only protocol, but the fundamental rights of Sergeant Brooks. She ordered the suspension of the officers pending further investigation, mandated reforms to security protocols, and awarded damages to the plaintiff. A hush fell over the courtroom, followed by a swell of murmurs and quiet applause. Elijah remained calm, but inside, a fire burned, not of anger, but of vindication. His wife Lila squeezed his hand. "It's a victory," she whispered. "But more importantly, it's a statement." The impact of the verdict spread far beyond the courthouse. Local news stations ran features highlighting the case. Civil rights organizations hailed it as a step forward. Veterans groups organized forums to discuss inclusion and respect within the armed forces. Colonel Randall Hayes, the base commander, began a series of town halls to address systemic issues raised by the case. For many, the story sparked reflection and a renewed commitment to change. At home, Elijah and Lila found moments of quiet respite. The weight of the fight still lingered, but so did hope. Over coffee, they discussed the path ahead. "We won this battle," Elijah said, "but the war for dignity and justice? That's ongoing." Lila nodded thoughtfully. "That's why we have to keep pushing. For the next generation. For those still unheard." Elijah's passion for mentorship blossomed. At Florida A&M College of Law, he became more than a guest speaker, a mentor, a guide, a source of inspiration. In classrooms filled with young faces hungry for change, he shared lessons forged in fire. "The law," he told them, "is not a weapon of oppression if you learn to wield it wisely." He taught them about patience, about strategy, about resilience, about standing firm when the world expects you to fall. One student, a tall young man named Jamal, approached after class. "How do you carry that strength?" he asked. Elijah smiled, recalling his own youth. "By remembering who stand behind you, by standing with others when they feel alone." Meanwhile, Lila's efforts to launch the Gideon South Legal Aid Initiative gained momentum. Starting a nonprofit was a battle of its own. Grants to apply for, community meetings to attend, cases to review. But each success, a family helped, a wrong righted, renewed her commitment. The initiative soon became a beacon for military families and underserved communities across the region. They provided free legal counsel, advocacy, and education, leveling a playing field often tilted against the marginalized. The story of Elijah Brooks and the Four Seals inspired countless others. Letters poured in from veterans, from young hopefuls, from everyday citizens touched by their courage. One such letter came from Marcus, a high school senior planning to join the military and law school. "I won't be like you," it read. Elijah kept the letter on his desk, a symbol of the legacy he was helping to build. As the seasons changed, so did the community. Events were held to raise awareness about systemic bias and the importance of respect in the military. Workshops taught young service members about their rights and how to advocate for themselves. Elijah and Lila became regular speakers at these events, sharing their story not for praise, but to empower others. One evening, sitting on their porch with cups of tea, Elijah reflected aloud. "People say the law is blind." Lila replied softly, "Maybe it only sees what we let it see." Elijah nodded. "But when someone like us stands up and says, 'Look harder,' it changes the way it looks." Their fight wasn't over. There were still battles ahead, against ignorance, against complacency, against prejudice. But they were ready. For them, for their son Jason, and for everyone who needed to see that dignity and respect were non-negotiable. If Elijah and Lila's story moved you, if it reminds you the power in standing firm against injustice, share this video. Subscribe and join a community committed to stories that matter, stories of resilience, courage, and change. Because every voice raised against unfairness chips away at the walls of silence. And together, we build a world where respect is the standard, not the exception.